I'm Will Carr, and I'm here to fire you up. Welcome, everyone, to the Will Carr Speaks podcast. I am excited you are here, and particularly for this episode today. In this show, I sit down with an extraordinarily successful entrepreneur and a mentor of mine who I've known for maybe going on a decade. But John Thorne is not just an entrepreneur who started multiple businesses, but he's also an inventor, which I find is an extremely interesting path. He not only invented some things that were very revolutionary in the medical industry, but we're going to sit down and talk about what that looks like to exit, what that looks like to take your invention from nothing more than just an idea and get it into a material object that is actually something that can be used in real life. But then what it's like to build a business around that and be able to sell that business to a larger entity. So anyway, this podcast is full of gems. John is a man who is just full of so much knowledge and great life experience, and which is why I just have so much fun talking to him every time that I do. So you guys are in for an absolute treat with this episode. I hope you stick around and listen to the whole thing, because if you do, you're going to hear some fascinating insights into John's mind and just what an incredible human he is, not just as a businessman and entrepreneur, but also a family man who has his priorities in life spot on. So with that in mind, I had an awesome time having this conversation, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks for being here. Welcome to the Will Carr Speaks podcast. Excited to have you here today and sit down for another incredible conversation with a good friend and mentor of mine, John Thorne, who is an investor, inventor, and entrepreneur. So we're going to have a lot of fun stuff to talk about and just really dive into entrepreneurship and life in general. So thanks for being here today, John.
Well, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah.
You and I have had some great conversations over the years, and maybe we'll have one here.
Yeah. Well, let's hope so. I mean, if with all the good conversations we've had in the past, if we finally put one on camera and it sucks, I'd be super disappointed.
Well, it can happen.
Yeah, you never know. So you're gonna get what you get today. I think it's gonna be a good one though. So yeah, man. If I kind of just want to dive into some of the basics of some of the stuff that you've done, I want to kind of start with just obviously your journey of inventing the Silverglide and really turning that invention into a business. Because I think it's one thing for people to have an invention and it's really just one thing for people to have an idea, right? And then it's a whole other thing to be able to take that idea, turn it into a real world product, and then be able to actually turn it into a business that cash flows and is self-sustaining to the point where you can sell it. So
yeah, it's a long journey.
Yeah. Doesn't happen overnight.
No. And Silverglide was an interesting one. It started, really, I was doing some research for a company in Silicon Valley. I was working for a consulting company, and they had a collagen patch that they wanted to sear to tissue, and collagen, and this was to seal pneumothorax or a leak in lungs. And collagen's very sticky stuff, and so anything they used to kind of sear this in place using electrosurgical energy was causing the patch. It would stick to the probe and rip off, and we basically came up with a silver probe for them that worked beautifully, and it didn't stick, and it would have been great for them, but that patch really was one of those products that went nowhere and they shelved it. Mm-hmm. But I'd been working on this electrosurgical device that didn't stick, and so was able to get the technology from them and put a group together, and we got a product through FDA and got it to market and started selling it for the better part of a year and sold a handful of them.
Yeah.
And we can talk a lot about that, about the difference between getting your product to market and getting a saleable product to market.
Right.
This one was not saleable, but doctors would use it when we could get them to use it, but they'd come back and say, yeah, it's okay, but make my bipolar forceps not stick, you'd really have something. And we started studying this, and bipolar forceps are used by facial plastic surgeons, ENT surgeons, neurosurgeons for really their primary instrument. And so I remember a board meeting where we were showing how our sales were going up, and one of my board members said, yeah, they're going up, but Jonathan, they still round to zero. And that was a painful thing to hear, but it was true. So we pulled back and tried to develop, and were successful in developing the non-stick bipolar forceps. And it was like night and day. I do remember it was just the first ones we took out to the doctors, the first pre-production devices. They would not give them back.
Yeah.
They'd say, yeah. And we were like, yeah, but we need these back. And it's like, nope, you bring me, you can sell me one, but I'm keeping these until you do. So
Wow.
it was very different. That was a very, very fun product to sell.
Yeah.
And so once we had a saleable product, then we started spending money where you need to.
Yeah.
And luckily we hadn't done that when we didn't have a saleable product. And so we still had a little bit left in the bank.
Yeah.
And we were able to, hire a regional sales manager and build out a rep network.
So what made your first product not sellable and in the next iteration sellable? Because it was really the same product, right? Like there wasn't much drastically different about it. What?
There was, from a surgical standpoint, and our first product was something that was kind of, it was new. They weren't, it was not something that they had in their normal surgical tray.
Yeah.
And a few doctors really liked it, but the forceps, everybody had forceps. It's just they stuck. And you can imagine if you're trying to seal a vessel, especially in neurosurgery. I mean, tumors are fed by blood through tiny little vessels.
Mm-hmm.
And so taking out a tumor in a brain is very tedious, and you have to go around hour after hour cauterizing these, or sealing these tiny vessels. And if you seal it and then you pull your forceps away and they're stuck and it rips open the vessel again, it's just this kind of death spiral as you're trying to get this out. These didn't do that, and they, because it didn't stick, they could seal all along the vessel. And so it was a profound difference. But it was a painkiller product. It removed a frustration. Mm-hmm. And I think there are a couple of different products. We've talked about this. There are the enablers and the painkillers. There's whether in talking, you've got Advil came out, was a great hit in the market. It was a painkiller. You've got Viagra. It was an enabler. Look at the difference between the price of the two. I mean, and we knew where we were, but those enablers, you can still do very well with the painkiller, and that's what this was. This was removing that frustration from the doctor.
Yeah. So, man, let's just dive into the journey of getting something like this started, because you don't just have your first invention and you magically have a success.
No.
So, and whether it be an invention or, you could apply that to, you don't just have your first business idea and 3 days later you're a millionaire. Let's dive into that a little. Tell me about the journey of really what it takes to get something successful.
Yeah. And that was a great company, and it was a 7-year run, and it was a great 7-year run. But as we do go back, entrepreneurship, we've talked about it, it's a sickness.
Yeah.
And my very wise accountant said once, well, when you have a business that doesn't work out as you thought, as fails, the IRS may come knocking on your door 2 or 3 years later and want to know if it's legit. So when you wind it down, throw all the stuff you have, your financials, your books, your marketing plan, your business plans, throw it all into a box and speak into a tape recorder. Now it's a chip, but
Yeah.
and speak for an hour or more and everything about the business, because you'll forget those details. Throw it in the box, tape it shut, label it, and put it somewhere and store it for 10 or 15 years. Well, before Silverglide, I'd thrown out 7 of those boxes, or I had 7 of them in my garage. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're going to probably have a lot of failures.
Yeah.
There are those, Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates that get it the first time, but it's important to remember they dropped out of Harvard because they knew more than their professors.
Right.
They did not drop out because they were failing first year accounting.
Right.
And if you're failing first year accounting at City College, you probably shouldn't go into entrepreneurship. You should put your focus on there. But most of us, it takes 4, 5, 6, 7 times to get it right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, it's like you bring up those 2 guys and just, obviously those are the stories I think oftentimes people hear. But that they're very few and far between. Like
very few.
Entrepreneurship is very much more a route of having failures, learning from those failures, and then you almost have to be a glutton for punishment.
Yeah. Yeah. You can think of those 7 boxes as 7 lessons or 7 degrees along the way to get that. And you also, you need the education. I had my engineering degree. I worked for 10 years for a great company, that Datex Omida, that was really good at hiring fantastic talent. And I got to work with that talent. So I learned from some of the best in finance and accounting and marketing and sales, production operations management, as well as where I was, which was in R&D.
Mm-hmm.
But during those times, I had these engineering ventures, but I wasn't quitting my day job.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I went and got an MBA with an emphasis in finance and marketing. And after all that, and one more failed business, I got one that worked.
Yeah.
So it is a journey.
Yeah. How much do you think actually going back to school to get your MBA, if you were to say on a scale of 1 through 100, how much percentage of what you actually learned in that applied to making you a better entrepreneur? Do you feel like the majority of that was, I don't want to say a waste of time, but this is kind of the conversation between more traditional education versus the street smarts that you get from trying and failing in the businesses and things like those 7 boxes you threw out?
Yeah.
How much of an impact how much do you think it actually mattered that you went back and got your MBA?
Oh, I think it definitely mattered a lot. I don't know about putting it on a scale, but certainly above 70 on a scale of 1 to 100. I think, the first year of my program, and I did it in 15 months. So that first year I was learning a lot. The last part I was pretty bored, but there was one professor, a guy named John Mullins, who was fantastic at he was a tough professor. We had these papers we'd have to write on it, and it was worth 10 points, or for the best. And I remember on one, he did not like how I attacked the problem. I got a 2 out of 10. So he was a tough guy. Of course, had to go back and talk with him and try and justify it. And got good grades in the class, but Yeah, he'd been an executive at the Gap, and he knew his stuff. And without him, I think my program, my MBA would have been 2/3 or half of what it
Okay.
was. He ended up being a board member, advisory board member for Silverglide, and
Interesting.
he was the one who actually said your sales round down to zero, Jonathan. So,
Was his focus marketing, or what was his focus?
yes, marketing. And yeah, and it was all it was case oriented, and that's where you get the real the impact, I think, of an MBA program. Is it really has to be case focused. I mean, we'd read cases, and then we'd have to write business strategies and plans around them, and as a group. So it teaches you not only how to write the plans, etc., but it also teaches you how to work with people of very different habits and backgrounds, everything else. That a technical program like engineering, you get some of that, but not the intensity of a case-based MBA program.
Totally. Very different. Very different.
Yeah.
Do you think one of the differences between let me frame it this way. Do you think some of the biggest differences between the businesses that you tried and failed versus the ones that have had success were the business model or the product itself, or more so the group of people that you had around you? Because I hear you talking about, this guy was on my board or these guys were involved, versus I would imagine several of the boxes you threw out probably had no involvement from anyone other than yourself.
You're right. There was a mix of both, but I would say the majority of the businesses that failed were people oriented.
Okay.
And a mistake I made a couple of times, same mistake, was you start a business and you're starting it with a buddy and you go, well, we'll just split it 50-50 and start on it. And then your buddy says, well, I'm moving to Tucson and I'm not really that interested. And it's like, well, can you give your stock back? Well, no. And so, you're working on a business that you've got half ownership in. And later on with Silverglide, I started it and got the foundation laid and then brought people in, and they worked for equity. And a lot of people got equity in the business, but they had to work for it as they went along.
Yeah. Versus just equity for an idea or being in the same room when an idea is thought of.
Exactly. And, there have been lots of successful companies that started with two guys that, Apple or whatever, and they split it. But at some point you've got to have an equitable division the shares should be going to the people that are doing the work.
Right. Yeah. Because, I think of this concept of everybody can have ideas, and almost everyone does have ideas.
Yes.
Right. So what separates people that can have an idea versus people that can actually execute on an idea?
Grit.
It just really not is. Giving up.
Yeah, it is not giving up. I know I shared the poem with you. You mustn't quit, because it's a good one. But that tenacity has to be there, and even the most successful businesses, even Silverglide. I mean, there were a lot of tough times there. I think we had talked about we were doing very well about 5.5 years into the business, and it looked like it was a good time to start thinking about an exit. Yeah. And we put together a book of kind of the business and the structure, and took it on the road, started to see the interest within the bigger medical device companies, and we had good interest. And then one of my reps called me and he said, I'm here with a surgeon, and I have an instrument in my hand that he says works every bit as well as Silverglide for 60% of the cost.
Mm.
And I said, can you send it to me? And it was our first supplier that had gone and gotten, gotten a patent that they thought covered themselves. And you need to think about patent law. If you have a patent on A, B, and C, and then you patent A, B, C, and D, a patent is not a license to practice; it's a license to exclude.
Yeah.
And so, if you patent A, B, and C, and D, you still have to go back to the person who did A, B, and C. Well, they didn't do that. They came back or just brought it out to the market, and we spent almost 2 years in litigation, won on all counts. But that was
Wow.
that was a tough time for the business, and a time that just, as a CEO, it just sucked all my time away from the business. But I had a good staff, and they kept the thing moving forward.
Yeah. So, man, so it was like your initial supplier basically stole your idea and started making their own and thought that they had some type of thing that could cover them, but it obviously didn't.
Yes.
And so you were thinking about selling Silverglide prior to that, but that 2.5 year period that you were in the, fighting them in the legal situation for essentially stealing your idea, did that kind of put selling on hold?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, as soon as they knew we were in litigation about the intellectual property, all the checkbooks closed.
Oh, yeah.
But the good thing is, when we won on all accounts, they all opened back up.
Yeah, and probably with bigger amounts.
Yeah, it was.
Because once you win something like that, and you've actually had to go through the process of protecting your intellectual property, and you win. It's
Absolutely.
Like, okay, well, now not only do they have this IP, but they've actually had to go through the process of defending the IP and won.
Yeah.
And I imagine that made it substantially more valuable.
Yeah, it did. But you're thinking as an entrepreneur, oh, I'm almost there. I'm the money's going to roll in. I can go hang out on the beach, and then you got 2 more years of going forward, and a pretty tough fight. And that's where you need that grit. That's where you need the tenacity. And there's a great TED talk by Angela Duckworth about grit and how she's a teacher and now she's a PhD researcher, but about, it's not the brightest, the most gifted students in her class that are successful. It's those that have that grit, that tenacity, that get up in the morning and push forward.
Yeah. Well, and oftentimes I think I've seen some stuff. It's not sometimes being too smart can hinder you. In the sense of, it's like, I've seen things where it's like, almost like the dumber you are not to realize you're going to fail, the better off you're going to be, because you can't think yourself out of why this isn't going to work.
There is. Yeah. You can make things work that others say, it's just you're not going to get there. And
but I see, going back to that 2-year battle, you're talking about grit, because in hindsight, you see how it worked out for the better after you won, and it allowed you to have an even better valuation. But that 2-year process that you were going through it, you didn't know you were going to win. Like, if you had lost, essentially your business the resellable value of your business is crushed.
Yes. Well, one of my business partners in the business, and another guy that had a lot of grit, and part of the success of the business is I hired people who had grit, and could that same attribute. But we knew in December of 2004 we were going to get 2005 that we were going to get the ruling from the court. And he said, December 2005, Silverglide's valuation is going to change by 3x. We just don't know which direction.
One direction or the other.
Yeah. So.
Oh, that's funny.
That does keep you up at night.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, in hindsight, that's just such a great story, right? Like, you've lived through that. Like, now that's just part of the journey that it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because to me, being an entrepreneur, so much of it's about the journey. It almost is the unknown that makes it, like we said in the beginning, it's a sickness or whatever.
Yeah.
It's the addiction to the having no clue what's going to happen.
Yeah. And the adrenaline is great highs and great lows.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you've got to be able to take the lows and really ride the highs. And another one of our board members, he said, celebrate every success.
Yeah.
And and we would.
Yeah. Yeah. The speaking of adrenaline junkie, I'm gonna take a strong right turn here. You had a bungee jumping business or something, like bungee jumping out of hot air balloons or something,
Yeah.
right? Like,
yeah, that was one of those. That was one of those boxes. Yeah, and we did that for a couple of years, and in Southern California, and we jump inland, but we recruit our customers from, the beaches, and we had a couple of bars that we were friends with, and they would allow us to play their the bungee videos, and we had guys that wore T-shirts that said "Just Jump," all of our buddies, and we'd walk around and convince people to go pay $125 to jump out of a perfectly good aircraft.
What made that? Let's talk about that business. What made that ultimately? I mean, other than just the scalability, the lack of ability to scale a business like that, there's only a certain degree to which you can scale something like that.
Yeah.
Did that business, would you say that business failed, or did you just and your friends decide to stop doing it? Like, what?
We kind of came out cash neutral on that business, but learned a ton.
Yeah.
I would say one of the lessons was the difference. I mean, before I'd gotten my MBA, learning about fixed and variable costs. I mean, we would come away from a day of jumping with just fistfuls of cash, and then you pay for land rent and balloons and aircraft, so you have to have it inspected, and then insurance, and paying the guys on the ground a little bit, and equipment, and by the end of all that, you're going, look, $2.
We had a lot of fun today, though.
Yeah, and it was. We had great fun doing it, but those costs that they get you there. So and that was before I really knew how to write a good business plan. The other thing with that and the reason we decided to get out was there was some money to be made, but there were a lot of very flighty companies getting into the business. They were, surplus equipment, no safety officers, all sorts of stuff. And there were some very publicized accidents. I mean, the most we ever had in a couple of years of jumping is one 78-year-old lady bit her lip. She was so excited. Oh. I mean, other than that, there was no bloodshed.
Yeah.
And so, and we were very, very serious about safety, but others weren't. And it just seemed where the industry was going, it was time to get out.
Yeah. Well, even at something like that, I'd say even if you're being cautious and taking those safety steps, if other businesses around you aren't, it's kind of like a reputation by association. Like,
yes,
the reputation of the other businesses are going to drag your reputation down just because it's similar, and people aren't going to really look like, oh, this company's doing this, but these other people are dying.
Yeah. And you look at the business now, they're still doing it, but not nearly to the extent. I mean, they were, for bungee jumping for a while, it was, they'd have it in corporate training programs where they take their latest class of executives out to go bungee jumping, but face their fears. But it was a fad, and it's important to know, if it's a fad, it might be time to get out early, and we did, luckily.
Yeah.
It was funny that my business partner and I both had been thinking the same thing, and we were at a stoplight in California, and he turned to me and said, "What do you think about this business?" And I said, "Yeah, well, I think it's played its course." And by the time we got to the next stoplight, we had our whole exit plan completely laid out. We were both thinking the same thing and just hadn't said it. And yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about, so earlier when we were having lunch, we were discussing how entrepreneurship can provide this opportunity, and how you in particular, and I would really resonate with this as well, but giving you like the opportunity to spend more time being a father, like with your family. But then there's also this side of entrepreneurship where you might work 80, 90 hours in a week sometimes. How Talk to me about that balance between, because it's almost like this catch 22 situation within entrepreneurship. In some ways it seems like it can give you a lot of freedom to do the things that you love, but also and have time to spend with your family and your friends and community. But sometimes it also is the complete opposite swing of that pendulum, where it takes up so much of your time that you don't have time for anything else. So talk to me about kind of that journey for you. Do you feel like that kind of ebb and flows, or like?
Well, entrepreneurship is tough. It takes a lot of time. I mean, on the one hand, you are your own boss, so you can schedule time to get away for, you know, I mean, camping trips and scout meetings and stuff, but not that much. I mean, I was spending between, I mean, traveling 100 to 150,000 miles a year, and that takes its toll on the family.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember distinctly. I don't know how long I'd been out on the road, but I was at this party of doctors that just as a trade show started, and we were exhibiting, and it was the opening party, and it was up on this beautiful deck, and the sun was setting, and I looked out, and there was this airplane leaving this contrail of, you know, kind of that golden contrail when the sun's setting. And I looked out, and it was right over the Washington Monument. I'm going, I'm in Washington, D.C. And I didn't even know what city I was in. And I
Yeah.
was really, at that point, you're like, okay, business is way overshadowing my family.
Yeah.
And you know, but still, you, at times with, like the lawsuit, at times it's a fight, and you don't have much of a choice but to spend that time, and yeah, family life does suffer. And I
Mhm.
think, I don't think there's any way around that. But then, you know, there are times where you come back and make it up to them, and you go on a week-long pack trip up into Yellowstone or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, you know, so
Yeah. Cause I think that's what, like, for me as an entrepreneur, a lot of it is about lifestyle. And even though there are times where my time is my time is taken from me a lot, where I have to be doing something. There is also that balance of, I get to coach my daughter and all of her things. And like, you get to, if I want to go ski on a Tuesday, except for this year, cause we've had no snow.
yeah,
Typically, if I want to go ski on a Tuesday, I can. Um, and I think that sort of balance can be tough for non-entrepreneurs to understand, but also I think it can be tough to just balance, um, between working on something all the time, because there's also the component of entrepreneurship that I think sometimes we're having so much fun working. Like, someone asked me a few weeks ago or something how many hours a week I think I work, and I really couldn't even like answer the question. I wasn't sure, like, because so much of, I guess, time that I'm working, I feel like I'm playing, or I'm having so much fun that it's like, okay, I guess those hours were work hours.
yeah,
You know?
Yeah, and the majority of it is fun. And as you said, it ebbs and flows. I think you have to be really good at defining those ebbs and flows in your life. The um, and I mean, it's easy to say work hard and play hard,
Yeah.
but you have to figure out how to play hard with your family.
Hmm.
And um, as an entrepreneur, you don't get that much time on your own skiing or whatever. I mean, you're either working and you're enjoying it, or you don't do it. I mean,
Hmm.
there's no reason to do it unless the majority of your work you're enjoying. And I very much enjoy entrepreneurship and
Yeah.
and building something, but you got to take that time off and focus 100% on your family and make that great quality time that you
Hmm.
spend with them.
Yeah. Because I think almost like we talked about how you have to have that grit to be able to stick with it.
Yeah.
But part of what makes you have the ability to have that grit is that you're enjoying a lot of it.
Yeah.
Because if you're just miserable all the time, it's a lot tougher to have
Oh yeah.
grit.
Yeah, it is. And there are these tasks that are miserable, and you just have to power through them. But most of it's fun. And then, of course, on the family side, it's great having a loving family and a very understanding wife,
Yeah.
which I do have, and trusting that it'll all work out.
Yeah. Yeah. If I can only imagine to be to be an entrepreneur, building something, having to do like if your spouse is not on board with what you're doing, that's gonna make it miserable
Oh, yeah.
to be able to accomplish. And
Yeah.
yeah, I would say there's probably a lot of entrepreneurs that end up in that situation. Um,
Uh huh.
I don't know. I'm glad that it's not us.
I was lucky with Silverglide. My wife and my mother-in-law and father-in-law were investors and supporters and biggest cheerleaders. And yeah, on the dark times, that really helps when they're there and can help talk you away from the cliff.
Yeah. What is it that you like most now about being on the other side of entrepreneurial success? And yeah, I'll leave the question there. I'm not going to preface anymore.
Well, you have entrepreneurial success, and then I have to say one thing, because Silverglide was the eighth box,
Yeah.
and then you kind of get cocky and go, yeah, I've got this thing down, and then my ninth venture didn't turn out all that well, but I learned very quickly that this wasn't going with the way I wanted,
Yeah.
and and stepped out. Um, but yeah, I think the other side, having done it once and then again a couple more times, you learn to spot when something's working and
Mm.
not working. It's not quite the high of that first time. I mean, when you did that first entrepreneurial success, and it was great. I mean, we sold. It was 10 times revenue, 18 times money invested.
Yeah.
It was definitely a solid hit. Um, so yeah, and I don't think you don't quite get that high again. And you also get people always ask, are you are you sad that you sold? And
Mm.
of course, the answer is yeah. I mean, at times, because the market really turned out where we thought it was going, and who we sold to, which was a great company, and they on our core products executed pretty well, but on our future plan they didn't. And I think of you always think about where you could have been and how much bigger and more fun you could have made the company.
Yeah. Yeah. Because yeah, I don't really think about. I, I'm not on the other side yet, so I haven't had to think about that in that sense
Yeah.
of like there probably is that bit of like, well, of course you're happy, you succeeded, you did great, you big win, but then there probably is a bit of that thinking of like, well, how much bigger could we have won?
Hmm.
And so yeah, I don't want to call it like regret, but you probably, I mean, you probably don't think about it now anymore so much, or maybe you do. Am I like, is that something that you felt like was more prominent within the first few years, or is that something that you still think about now?
Pretty much the first few years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then after that, you're thinking about what you're doing next, right?
And yeah. And once you get a company to that size, I mean, it's great because you've got a fair number of staff. And, I had an amazing office manager who would make sure that all my needs were met and everything. But there were two more people who wanted her job. And so you're kind of, it's like, I'm king.
Yeah.
It's good to be king, and then when you sell, that all goes away.
Yeah.
But you know, but even as king, it was but the benevolent king. But it was a yeah, that last year after we'd won the lawsuit, and also because I'd spent so much time away from the company,
Yeah.
that people were just doing so well in their jobs and
Mhm.
so self-sufficient and making great decisions, um, that that last year was really fun.
Mhm. So, so you talked about your ninth box being something that didn't work. Do you feel like you were able to cut your losses easier? Like,
Much easier, and it was, yeah, it was kind of at the business stage. Um, well, beyond that, I mean, we had a product, but and that was a people thing. It just wasn't going to work.
yeah. And do you think
Yeah.
it's like, are you able to cut your losses easier because you've had experience to know that it wasn't going to work, or is it more so because like I think almost when you're young in entrepreneurship, it's easy to get really married to your dreams,
Hmm.
and think
It
like,
is.
because we talk about grit, but sometimes that grit can almost, if you're just trying to pound a square peg through a round hole, right? It doesn't matter how much grit you have,
Yeah.
you're never going to get that square peg through that hole. It's just not going to fit. So, do you think that that is part of it? Like that after you've had that success, it's almost like the like sexiness or attract like your dream of like, this has to work at all costs because it's my dream. You're kind of past that.
There is some of that, although prior to Silverglide, I started to learn that lesson. And I remember I had lunch with a very successful entrepreneur here in Boulder, and he uh, said, the reason I've been most successful because I've been able to walk away from businesses
Mm,
that I realized did not work, would not work.
mm-hmm,
Um, and it's the businesses that I walked away from that, or was able to, leave behind, that made me successful.
mm-hmm.
And I think that's very true. Um, the seventh business that failed, I think we talked about that. It was the early '90s. It was a road game guide, because when I
Oh
traveled,
yeah.
still love going to professional sports events. And this was before the internet. And there was a little book that all travelers carried called the Official Airline Guide, which, if you needed to get somewhere, it had every flight listed of every airline. And so if you were in Chicago and you needed to get to Denver, you could flip open to the right page and figure out how to get there from here. And this was similar for sports. It had a section for every city that had a professional sports team, and you could, if you were in Chicago, you could flip to it, and it would give you phone numbers you could call, where to get Bulls tickets. It had seating charts, all of that. Um, but we set a goal for our mail order response, and did what they call a blind mailing, where you people can sign up, but you don't take their money. That would be bad.
Yeah.
But they can send checks as long as you don't cash them, or
Uh-huh.
they can give you your credit card, but as long as you don't take their money. The direct mail association calls that a cold mailing, and you can do that. And we said, if we get a 3% response, we'll move forward. Well, we got a 2.6% response. It wasn't there, and we said, we're not going any further. So I still think about that one, because
Yeah.
then I go, I could have been the next Ticketmaster.
Yeah.
You know?
Ticketmaster, TripAdvisor.
Yeah.
Like all these companies. Yeah. We've definitely talked about that one before. And that one is,
Yeah.
it's interesting because that's a great example of, man, it's like, do you have these really hard metrics in place and strictly stick to logic, right? Because you had the goal of 3%, you got 2.6, so it was like, well, we're not going to do it. But that's an example of that could have gone a few different ways. You start something like that's like right before the internet comes out, so things were still paper.
Yes.
And you're having these booklets. So if you start something like that, you start to have some success, you start to grow. Either the internet comes along and someone else basically creates your business on the internet and destroys you, or you've already got this head start on the business and the internet comes along and you're able to just like dump gasoline on the fire.
Exactly.
But you'll never know what direction that would have went because you took a very hard line at 3%. 2.6 is not 3, so we're done.
There are a lot of coulda, woulda moments in entrepreneurship, and you got to leave those behind. And that's one of those. And I think about it because that whole project really spun out of my last semester in graduate school, getting my MBA. And I remember one of the classes, this professor walked in and he handed us all AOL discs, the America Online, and he said, this is called the World Wide Web, and it's going to be really big. And you guys each need to open up an internet account, and you'll be able to send emails. And we're kind of like, yeah, right. And, but there was no internet. There had not been a purchase of, and then Jeff Bezos came along in 1993 and with Amazon and he said, I'm going to sell books online. And there were tons of people who were pointing at him and laughing and going, what an idiot.
Yeah.
Well,
no one's going to buy books online. I'm going to walk through the store.
Flip through the book. I'd never buy a book if I couldn't flip through it first. Yeah. So.
Man. Yeah. Talk about. Yeah, because I mean, Amazon is just such a great example of how businesses can evolve.
Yeah.
Because you look at that and we're just going to sell books online to now you can buy everything online through Amazon, but not that. Now you can buy your movies and live stream whatever and listen to all your music through, it's.
Yeah. And that's an organization that has not only the founder, but a lot of people with tenacity and vision. And it's people are going, why are they buying Whole Foods? Well, you got a whole bunch of Whole Foods around. You buy something on Amazon and you don't like it, and you take it over to Whole Foods and drop it off.
Yeah.
And now, you're watching Amazon Prime and something pops up online and says, want to buy this? And you can put it in your basket, or you can just go over to Whole Foods and get it. It's all, there are a lot of people who condemn them, but they definitely put it all together.
Yeah. Just such another example too of like sometimes like them for me, it's the example of the knife and then spread, because they dominated a certain vertical, which then allowed them to spread out into all these other verticals. Which I would say is not obviously the Amazon story is not your typical entrepreneur story.
But it did start very much the same way, like you said, like a knife. And a great book, Crossing the Chasm.
Yeah.
If it's one of the go-to entrepreneurial books, but focusing on a segment. And Apple did not become Apple with the iPhone. Apple was failing, and they said, okay, we are going to focus on one tiny segment and own it. and that's the graphic designers. And we were going to use our better graphics power to capture this market. And they focused year after year on that group until they owned it. And it's like it's like a drop falling into a pond, and then it went out from there. But they had to get that inner ring first and completely own that market, and then use just that tenacity and certainly Steve Jobs' focus on, we're not going to do any product unless it's just got the wowza, wow, whatever in it. It's got to be the very best.
Yeah. And he just, man, there's never been anyone better to present their ideas in a way to get people excited about them.
Yeah. I look at these AirPods and, it's the sound. And then you look and you take these out and it just kind of snaps back in, a little magnetic thing. And that has nothing to do with the primary function. It doesn't have anything to do with, how good the sound quality is, how, the volume controls or anything else. It just has to do with that sexiness of
presentation.
I mean, even from as you open the box, he was adamant about how long it took, as the air rushes out, how long it takes to open the box. I mean, every detail, far, far away from that primary function that to make the experience just amazing.
Yeah. A masterclass in marketing, like for the actual user, like the end user, the ability to, like, you get something in your hand and you feel something special. Like, man, no one's done better than Apple at that.
Yes.
Let's dive in. So your current manufacturing business, were you just bored?
Yeah, I was bored, and there was a guy who had been working at the business, and we have a business that does mission critical coatings for surgical instruments. Yep. It's called Surgical Coatings, and it was a pretty tiny business. The gentleman who started it was a coatings guru named Jim Morris, and Jim suddenly passed away. In fact, he wanted to talk with me and about, I'd sold Silverglide, about transitioning his business. And at our second meeting, he said, "Well, they tell me I'm dying. I don't believe him." Well, he should have, because we didn't have a third meeting. But I met his son, and his son was at Colorado School of Mines, where you spent time, and was a engineering student and helping his mom with the business, but the business was declining. And then he graduated, and we said we could buy this business, and the business was called Integrated Surgical Sciences Corporation, a big mouthful. And the first day we changed the name to Surgical Coatings, which is what we did do. And we went from 10 pages back on the internet to the first page, and then number one. And so that's been a good ride. We've built the company up nicely. We're getting ready to move into a new factory, 23,000 square foot factory in Littleton. So
that's awesome. Yeah. But
that was a different, that wasn't your normal entrepreneurship, a new idea. That was what's now a 30-year-old business. And we got it when we were, 21, 22 years into the business. But it had kind of muddled along, and we decided to change it from kind of a shop to a more of a world-class medical device coatings company.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things there. One, it's interesting how because a lot of times you think of marketing for consumer goods and how important it is for what's sitting on the grocery store shelf, right? Or what electronic products you're going to go buy at the electronics store or online now.
Yeah. Consumer marketing.
Yeah. But marketing is also so important in a very, non-sexy, non-end user selling to other businesses as well.
Very much what they call the B2B marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you should study both and the techniques that work for both. And Yeah. Yeah. And even, in medical devices, a lot of it, you're not selling to an individual so much of the time as much as an institution
Mm-hmm.
like a hospital. And so it's, you've got to have a multi-pronged approach there, because the needs of the sterile processing department are very different than the needs of the surgeon or the scrub nurse. And you need to make sure you have all of those things covered.
Mm-hmm.
A lot like Jobs in his different things. I mean, the sterilization department is, do you have those accessories? Do you have the sterilization trays? They can just snap the instruments in,
Mm-hmm.
wrap them, and throw them into the autoclave.
Mm-hmm.
In for the scrub nurse, is it easy to set up prior to surgery, and also for the surgeon, does it work each time, every time?
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about, so the entrepreneurial journey of starting a business from complete scratch, an idea, is
Yeah.
completely different than the entrepreneurial journey of buying an existing business. And you
Yes.
see two very distinct things. Like, you see people that just specialize in buying businesses, or you see people that really just specialize in creating a new CPG brand or something. But tell me, from your personal experience, what are some similarities and what are some major differences between the starting from scratch model versus the buying an existing business?
Well, starting from scratch, there's many more unknowns, especially with regard to the financial. I mean, and it's what will somebody pay for this product or service? Because I mean, there are a lot of entrepreneurial ventures that find that they have a product that people would like, but they'd like it for a quarter of the cost you can make it for, and thus the business fails. So you don't have that or you have that less in a mature business. But still, there's a lot of the finance, the accounting, the marketing are still very similar whether it's a new business or an existing one.
Mm-hmm. So it's almost just like you're just starting from a different point in the journey, right? It just has a different starting spot.
Yep. Yeah.
So
yeah. In fact, if you look, there's the book we talked about, Crossing the Chasm. There's the next book, Inside the Tornado, which it by the same author, and it's the journey we talked about.
Finally crossed the chasm, and now you're inside of a tornado. Congratulations.
Yeah. And we had some of that where, okay, now everybody wants them. Now how do we get them built fast? And and you go from, I've gone from the engineer, R&D, prototype stage to now I've got to focus on productions, operations, management, and product pipelines and all sorts of things that you didn't before.
Yeah. Well, to wrap up here, I'm going to throw this question out at you. You can, go whatever direction you want with it. Like, what, for anybody that might be listening who has never been an entrepreneur, but has ambitions to do something beyond what they're doing, has ideas, and feels like they have the grit, that we talked about, what would be your biggest piece of advice for someone who wants to take that journey, who wants to take that next step, but maybe is just not sure how?
I'd say start small.
Yeah.
And realize that there is a good chance of failing. And we talked about education at all different levels, from the classic collegiate education to, as you talk about, reading books and listening to podcasts, but also making sure that you're doing the physical, writing business plans, not just getting them in your heads, trying to get that out. So it is a practice. I mean, and so for someone thinking about it, practice, write a business plan.
Mhm.
If you can't get your first business plan out and on the table, at least a first solid draft, entrepreneurship probably isn't for you.
Yeah.
You got to have a plan.
Mhm.
And my father-in-law, who was 32 years in the Air Force, 4 years flying, would always say, "You got to have a plan before you can deviate." He had a Texas accent, but it's so true. You get the plan, and then you work your way through that. If you like doing that, there's a good chance you'll be a good engineer or a good entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I like the idea that you said of starting small. So that way, don't throw all your eggs in one basket when you've never done this before. And even if you have done it before, you're probably still not a good idea to throw all your eggs in one basket.
No. And think about it before you take money from relatives, because you want to be able to go home for Christmas dinner. And I did I did on my 7th one or my 8th one for Silverglide. But prior to that, it was, I used my own funds or the guys that were working with me, but we kept it small.
Yeah.
And got to that point where, this isn't going to work for a number of reasons.
What made you confident enough? What made you confident enough to be able to ask the friends and family for money? Obviously, Silverglide turned out to be a success, but what made you confident enough to feel like that was the time to actually do that?
Well, by the time I started asking them for money, we had a saleable product. We didn't just have a product. So I could see that we were, the customer was really liking what we had.
Yeah.
And that gave me the confidence.
You had a proof of concept.
Yes. Well, it was more than a proof of concept. We were making sales, and they were much easier sales to make than our first product.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that gave me the confidence to go out and say, "Okay, Mom."
Yeah. Yeah, because I see that. Like, you had an actual fire at that point to pour gasoline on.
We did. We had a fire.
Versus like, hey, I've got a couple sticks.
Yes.
I got a couple of sticks. I think I'm going to light them, be able to light them on fire.
Yeah. Yeah. And by then, we knew our sticks weren't wet. We figured they would burn.
Yeah, because you can pour gasoline on a bunch of wet sticks. It's not going to do much.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Oh, well, John, I always love talking to you. These are always such great conversations that we have. And
it's always fun. We grin a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. We laugh. And man, I always learn things from talking to you. So I appreciate that, man. And just grateful to have another good, fun conversation here today. And I look forward to several more. So,
all right.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. See ya.
I'm Will Carr, and I'm here to fire you up.